So the first one is the distinguished Dr. Joe Connor, who will be speaking on pathogen elimination, the historical success drives future. Most everyone at this meeting knows of Dr. Connor and his long-standing input to the swine industry for many years, coming from Carthage Veterinary Service. We look forward. It's appropriate for Joe to talk about historical success. So thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate the opportunity. And what I want you to do is, as I talk through this, I went back and looked at historical cases, including viruses and some bacteria. But what did we do to eliminate disease, and how has that progressed over time? And then I looked at individual cases, and then I'll close with what's our industry opportunity. So as we think about how to eliminate pathogens and why to eliminate pathogens, there's a whole list of why we want to push forward as an industry. Cost of production competitiveness. Randy talked about that this morning. Exports somewhere above 25%. We have a high percentage of our production in segregated production. We've got evolving diagnostics, very reliable. We have veterinarians that understand the diseases quite well, the pathogens. We have evolving biosecurity. We have evolving biocontainment. We're moving toward One Health, welfare, increased sustainability, and importantly, we've got a long history of success. Just as a reminder, if we talk about cost competitiveness, you look on the right side. Only Brazil is just slightly underneath the US in terms of cost of production, updated in 2021, courtesy of Dermot Hayes and Steve Meyer. We think about the cost of disease. That remains a key driver for why would we eliminate individual viruses and bacteria. Call your attention to two, influenza A, listed by Tara Donovan in 2008, $10.31. Combined PRRS mycoplasma, or PRRS and MHIO, or PRRS and influenza, somewhere above or close to $10 per pig produced. I tend to think about this in cost of production. So if you look at currently a $200 per head cost of production, we would have about a 5% cost of that production in various pathogens. Obviously, we need to grab data for our own production systems and update some of these costs, either up or down. But these are out of published references. When you think about the ability to eliminate pathogens, it's good to go back and think about what attributes those pathogens have that we have to think about. So certainly infectivity, the virulence, we've seen that with 144L1C maybe, the pathogenicity, whether there's carrier states or latent states, modes of transmission, what vectors also might transfer the particular virus or bacteria, resistance to antimicrobials or disinfectants, the environmental survivability, and diagnostic detection. The thing that I would suggest is, though, that all of these evolve over time, and they will continue to evolve. Then as I think about the elimination strategies, there's also a long list that we have used within the industry over time, starting all the way with very simple sanitation, certainly depopulations, new stockings, strategic medication, unidirectional flow, parity segregation, medicated early weaning, and others. Almost always for us to eliminate, a pathogen, it's going to take a combination of these strategies. When you look at what have we actually eliminated, that list is also long. And I broke it down into what's been on the left, what's been eliminated in the US swine population. So hog cholera, classical swine fever, FMD, pseudorabies, VE. And then on the individual herd eliminations, including both viruses and bacteria, some new ones that you might not think about would be Actinobacillus suis, Strep suis, Bordetella. And then we can't forget about the parasites. A lot of them have been eliminated because of the change in how our production practices are. But the important thing is they have been eliminated, and so there are methods to do that. When you think about disease elimination, it almost always starts on individual herd, then it moves to an area, a region, state, country, and in some cases then the continent. Those always take coordination, involvement, and challenges that have to be worked through. So I want just historical cases to start with. So if we look at foot and mouth disease, notice that it took 59 years from the first to the last outbreak before we were able to eliminate that virus within the US. But I would remind us that our technology during that time period is not the same technology we have today, but yet with many unknowns, the virus was able to be eliminated. A couple of things that I want to point out on this slide though, when you say some things don't change. So look, this is foot and mouth history, a 7-foot chicken wire fence, 24-hour guard system to protect that individual site that was locked down. Individuals then going through tents and an infected wash required bathe and change clothes, very similar to what we do today. Steaming a truck, so now we wash bio-dry, but again, a practice that was established a number of years ago and effective. And then motor police that were regulating the number of people that came and went through that particular site. Second example is hog cholera elimination. I'd point out here in that the trigger point was 13% of the nation's hogs were lost due to mortality as a trigger point. And then the states got together and started a national elimination program. In this case, for that virus, 145 years from the first outbreak through the last positive case. Just point out on the right here, we talk all the time about African swine fever. In this case, it was hog carcasses piled outside as a contamination source for other farms. And then pseudorabies. If we take a look at it, at 1910 it was confirmed, and we eliminated that virus from US industry in 78. And this was actually when I was 6, 7 years old on our own farm, common to feed pigs and cattle in the same feedlot. Pseudorabies eliminated that process. And then just one other, vesicular exanthema history. Again, in this case, eliminated in a quite short time period within our US industry. So now I want to move into just the similar processes that we might do for a number of viruses that we have today. And what I want you to do is just think through that many of these have the same approach. So if we think about PRRS virus, what do we do today? We do biosecurity, we do herd virus exposure, we use vaccine, we close the herd, we restrict pig movements, and we have unilateral pig flow. eliminating it from at least the individual farm. Influenza A virus, very similar type of approach. We can eliminate a single strain of influenza virus 6 to 8 weeks through a strategic combination of homologous pre-farrowing vaccine, restricted movement of pigs and nurse sows, and again, unidirectional pig flow. And I would just show you some of the detail because again, this is somewhat parallel to each of the viruses that we might try to eliminate. So modified McRebel rules, and you just adapt them to the individual virus or maybe bacteria that you're trying to eliminate. Probably a key one that was identified several years ago was that if we're bringing back nurse sows, we need to wash those sows to remove the virus off of the individual sows, and that stops some of the circulation of influenza virus. Now I want to move into what I call industry opportunities. So at the bottom here, I've got these listed as industry elimination. Same type of strategy. I don't think we've had a positive case of TGE in the US for 2 years. And so you would say that would be one that we should move ahead, do the surveillance and testing necessary to validate that the virus is actually gone from our industry, and then if cases occur, very aggressively follow up those cases. Same type of approach, so eliminate by herd closure, expose the sow herd, the growing replacement gilts, approximately 12 weeks, and then the growing pig flow will eliminate the virus itself. PED, which entered our industry in 2013-14, very similar type of approach. We can very effectively eliminate it from the individual herd, very similar to TGE. The difference is we've got to be more aggressive in weaning down pigs to break that infection cycle, but generally 12 weeks of herd closure, and again, the pig flow will eliminate it with good sanitation, all in, all out. Opportunity for the industry. Delta coronavirus followed PED, similar type of approach, successful on individual herd, successful in area elimination programs. Seneca Valley virus is one that confounds the vesicle diagnostics. We can certainly on the individual herd eliminate it by exposure of the growing gilts, again, closure of the herd, restricted pig movements within the farrowing, and then elimination of the flow through the pigs. One, again, that I think our industry has the opportunity to look at elimination on a much broader geographical basis. There's been a lot of reports and a lot of success of Mycoplasma pneumoniae elimination reported not only at this conference, but others. And now you could sit and say, with that success, can we move it to a broader area? And then ultimately in a industry elimination. Our diagnostic techniques have continued to improve. We know that we may need a little bit longer herd closure than what we originally had, but again, almost always successful, very few rebreaks from the original infection. Actinobacillus pleuropneumoniae, we know from modified medicated early weaning and medicated early weaning, we can successfully eliminate that in a growing pig population. There are areas in our continent where APP has become quite active again. Number one way to eliminate that particular bacteria is through depopulation. When we use modified medicated early weaning or medicated weaning, we still have a sow population that is generally positive, but we did eliminate APP from about a 7,000 sow flow a number of years ago without depopulation of the sow farm, but a combination of vaccination. That particular farm had a number of gestation barns on it, so segregation, medication, early weaning, unidirectional flow. Swine dysentery or Brachiospira hypodysenteriae or Serpulina. We've always eliminated that by depopulation or by strategic medication, combined with intensive sanitation and rodent control, and again, unidirectional pig flow and a growing population. One that the industry can take on and likely eliminate that from our pig populations. And we don't want to forget about using parasiticides, which have been quite successful in eliminating Sarcoptes scabies. Again, our change in our industry, but as our industry now changes back to more outside pigs, we have to be aware that this would be a parasite that would increase its prevalence over time. So as I think about the history and the linkages, it is about continuous adaptation to these risks. New risks that are increasing for us in the US include feral swine. I think the last I saw was somewhere around 6 million head of feral swine, equal to our domestic sow population. Think about open pen gestation because of the interaction and transmission of certain viruses and bacteria with that interaction. As we increase the percentage of contact or the frequency of contact, as we see open range production. So now back to some smaller outside farms, we would expect that some of the pathogens that we have been able to eliminate will increase in frequency. And then if we move to more of a local food chain, again, we would say that the risk of some of these pathogens that we've previously eliminated, we have to be aware and look at how do we eliminate them from those populations. The important thing is that as you think about the history, and again, you go clear back to foot and mouth, hog cholera, pseudorabies, those pathogens were eliminated with much less knowledge than what we have today. And so you have to ask yourself, why don't we move forward on elimination of some of these? Because we have a lot more data, which leads to a lot more knowledge, and we've got consistency between many of these on how they can be eliminated within the individual herds and then area and region. So as we go forward, what I wanted to do was really rethink about what successes we've had as an industry and how the veterinary groups have led us toward elimination, and to recognize that disease typically represents 5% of our cost of production. We're an industry that exports a high percentage of our product. Randy Spronk did a great job this morning of identifying the need to be cost competitive, critical in an export type business. The bio-exclusion of any of these pathogens originates driven by that economic recognition. So when the cost is high enough, we look at ways that we can lower that cost by elimination. It certainly depends on the availability of diagnostic tools. Today, we're gifted in the US with not only an array of diagnostic tools, but also an evolving set of diagnostic tools. and it depends on the availability of biological and therapeutic interventions. And clearly it depends on management. So if we look at our farms today, and as I think through the unidirectional flow and some of the rules we put in place, many of farms for a short period of time can have the staff do Danish changes or shower in, shower out to segregate off that particular flow in order to eliminate an individual or separate pathogen. When we think about, though, then moving to an area or region, that eradication is a culmination of intensive efforts of a lot of stakeholders. So veterinarians, producers, diagnostic laboratories, researchers, biological, pharmaceutical companies, and then our state and federal authorities. Keep in mind that our techniques and our technology just continues to evolve. What I wanted to do today is just go back and look at the history, remind myself that there's always unknowns when we think about how we're going to eliminate pathogens. But our knowledge base today is much more solid and will continue to evolve for each of those. When you look back at the FMD and the hog cholera, noted in there is that transmission was done through contaminated garbage for hog cholera. Replace that with what we've learned in our feed transmission for PD, Delta coronavirus, and PRRS more recently. Animal movement and quarantine. Today we put up maybe geofencing, maybe we put up more solid walls, but again, try to look at containment. Transportation and collection point contamination. That was identified as a source for hog cholera contamination. We still have that as a risk to us, particularly in cull sows, but also at different collection points. And we continue to work on the risk of people entry and how to reduce that. For our industry, our global risks are higher because of the need to export product. If we truly have deglobalization, then maybe those risks will be reduced, at least in the short term. I would suggest that the market that our industry is currently going through will likely lead to more consolidation. And then when we have that, with better cooperation, we actually could have better regional elimination because there'll be better communication between the producers and between the systems. So it may lead to a broader elimination program from the area to the region. And then I think we have to accept that we need active surveillance for emerging pathogens, whether they are endemic pathogens, and certainly for our FADs. One of the questions we always get is, how do I manage the information transfer and how do I manage active surveillance? I believe in time we'll overcome those questions. And a key part for our own industry here is to get SHIP progressed and in place where the industry itself can then start working through the pathways for these various elimination and control programs. So with that, what I wanted to do was just link the past history with the success that we've had as a producer and veterinary community, and to really lay out again that we can start looking at many of these pathogens as a method to eliminate when it becomes an economic cost to the farm. Thank you.
We have time for a few questions. There are individuals on each side of the room with microphones. If you could raise your hand. Or
Joe. The examples you gave of successes were all federally regulated diseases, but we're out of that age right now. So what's that last link? You know, you can eliminate to a certain point until you need the feds to step in and force the rest. So how do you envision that?
Yeah, so I think, John, if I got your question right, we're moving toward a step also in biocontainment. So I think we're getting a better understanding of, we actually have the opportunity to contain a disease within a facility. Now, we've got a long ways to go to be able to do that. So that's early identification, but we're going to have point-of-care diagnostics. I think critical, because I think all of us recognize that our people on the farm frequently miss those early signs. But then how quickly we go into biocontainment and decision-making process to what to do in that individual farm is where I think, John, will move forward.
Other questions? What do you think are some of the key lessons learned from individual herd cases, situations that would help us on a broader scale?
To me, the key questions are to very early on look at what the farm itself can do to either contain or stop transmission or eliminate that pathogen. I think frequently, Tom, what we do is we hurry through that and we believe we're going to control it through the standard methods. But if we look at just separation, segregation, might be wean age, but those things that we already have in our toolbox, and do the economics to say that we want to move to eliminate that, then that gets extended out into the areas.
Okay. Let's give Joe another hand for a thing.